A robot just did something no human being has ever done in recorded history. Then it collapsed. It needed a stretcher. That's not a metaphor. That's exactly what happened this past weekend in Beijing, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand two things almost nobody's headline got right, including the headline that probably brought you here. Here's the setup. Usain Bolt's 100-meter world record has stood since 2009. 9.58 seconds. Every Olympic sprinter, every World Championship final, every hand-timed race in the history of the sport, nobody has ever gone faster than that. This weekend, a robot did. And if that sentence alone doesn't sound crazy enough yet, wait until you hear who finished last in the same race. It's not who you'd expect, and it might be the most important part of this entire story. If twists like that are your thing, get subscribed now, because this one has 3 more coming. At the World Humanoid Robot Games in Beijing, a machine called Tiangong Ultra, built by the Beijing Humanoid Robot Innovation Center, ran the 100 meters in 9.39 seconds. That's not close to Bolt's record. That's faster than it. Let that sit for a second before you decide how you feel about it. A machine just ran faster than the fastest human being who has ever lived. It gets stranger. In that exact same heat, a second robot also beat Bolt's time. Lightning, built by the smartphone company Honor, crossed the line at 9.47 seconds. 2 robots, 1 race. Both faster than history's fastest man, but neither one finished like a champion. Tiangong stumbled sideways and crashed into a padded wall, built specifically because organizers already knew these machines can't reliably stop themselves. Lightning didn't even make it that far. It collapsed entirely and had to be carried off on a stretcher. Speed, solved. Stopping, still very much a work in progress. And that contradiction, genuinely superhuman in one specific way, genuinely primitive in almost every other way that matters, is the entire story of where humanoid robotics actually stands right now. Both things are true, in the same 10 seconds, on the same track. But here's the twist: nobody led with. In that exact same heat, same race, same day, same global audience, a robot built by Unitree finished dead last. 12.41 seconds. Nearly 3 full seconds behind the winner. Unitree is the most famous humanoid robot company on Earth right now. Just days before this race, its stock jumped more than 5-fold on its Shanghai trading debut, pushing the company's valuation to roughly $50 billion. $50 billion. Dead last. Same heat, same day. In front of the exact global audience that showed up specifically to see if the hype was real. The company everyone assumed would dominate didn't just lose. It finished behind every other robot on that track. And it stings even more once you remember why Unitree became a household name in the first place. Viral martial arts routines and backflips at China's Spring Festival Gala, watched by hundreds of millions of people, arguably the single most viewed broadcast on the planet. A company that mastered choreographed viral moments got beaten badly the moment the test became something as simple and as unforgiving as a straight line and a stopwatch. Hype and performance are not the same thing. Not in robotics, not anywhere else. Remember that line? It's going to matter again in about 2 minutes. And it's worth asking why nobody saw this coming. Unitree spent the last 2 years building a brand around Flash, viral choreography, synchronized dance routines, robots doing backflips on command. That's genuinely impressive engineering, but it's engineering optimized for a very specific, very controlled kind of performance. A live stage, a fixed routine, cameras positioned exactly where the choreography needs them. A 100-meter dash is the opposite of that. It's raw, it's unscripted, and it punishes exactly the kind of instability that a flashy but less battle-tested running gait would expose. The market rewarded Unitree for looking impressive. The track just asked it to be fast, and the answer was no, and the sprint wasn't even the record that should worry you most that day. In the standing high jump, a robot cleared 2.88 meters. From a dead stop, no run-up. The human world record, set by Cuba's Javier Sotomayor back in 1993, sits at 2.45 meters. Sotomayor's record survived 3 decades of modern sports science, nutrition, and training optimization. A machine broke it in one event, on its first real global stage, by nearly half a meter. Now, before this starts sounding like a highlight reel for the robot uprising, let's be fair to the messier side, because that's the part most coverage conveniently skipped. Multiple robots at these games tripped mid-stride, fell apart mid-competition, or reportedly caught fire during their events. For every Tiangong Ultra breaking a world record, there was a machine that couldn't finish a basic task without malfunctioning live in front of a global audience. That's the honest state of this industry. Extraordinary peaks, sitting right next to genuinely embarrassing failures, often in the same afternoon, sometimes in the same event. Quick gut check before we move on. Which one of those robots would you actually trust to walk into your kitchen unsupervised? Drop your answer in the comments. I actually want to see what people pick, because I don't think it's as obvious as it sounds. Zoom out, and the scale of this event is hard to fully process. 2,056 robots, 666 teams, 16 countries, 51 events, from soccer to dancing to industrial task contests. Last year's inaugural games drew 280 teams total. This year that number jumped nearly 140%. An event that almost doubled its international participation in a single year isn't a novelty anymore. It's turning into a fixture. The same way CES or the Paris Air Show became fixtures once enough of the industry decided showing up mattered. So that's the setup. Real speed, real records, real chaos, and one very expensive company having a very public bad day. Now here's where the story most people told you actually starts to fall apart. The headline framing all of this, the one that probably got you to click, is that domestic Chinese chips beat Usain Bolt. That claim deserves a serious reality check, and it's the part almost nobody covering this race actually dug into. A 100-meter sprint is overwhelmingly a mechanical and control systems achievement. Leg length, actuator power, motor torque, the balance algorithm keeping the machine upright at full speed. Tiangong Ultra's own engineers specifically lengthened its legs before the games. That's carpentry and mechanical engineering, not silicon. Think about what that actually means. Hand a mediocre control chip to a robot with those exact same legs and those exact same motors, and it might run nearly as fast, just less stable doing it. Hand the world's best AI chip to a robot with short, weak legs, and it still loses to Tiangong Ultra by a wide margin. Legs and motors set the ceiling. The chip mostly decides whether the robot falls over trying to reach it. The chip inside a sprinting robot has exactly one specific job: process balance and motion data fast enough to keep 40 kilograms of metal from face planting at full speed. That's real, and it matters. But it's not the reason the robot is fast in the first place. Crediting a 100-meter time to a domestic chip is a little like crediting a race car's paint job for its top speed. So here's a real debate worth having in the comments. Legs, motors, or control software? Which one actually deserves the most credit for that finish line? I'll read through the top answers for the follow-up video. Here's the thing. The honest version of China's chip story is genuinely more interesting than the simplified one, and it deserved better than getting flattened into a headline. Real Chinese companies are building real AI chips specifically for robotics. Cambricon, based in Beijing, has explicitly prioritized processors built for embodied AI applications. That's a serious, real industrial push, not hype. But independent analysis of the broader humanoid sector has also been blunt about where the actual gap still sits. China holds a real, substantial lead in hardware manufacturing and physical robot bodies. It is still catching up on the AI models and chips that let those bodies actually think, plan, and adapt in the real world. That gap shows up the moment you look past sprinting toward anything requiring actual decision-making. A robot that can run a world record straight line can still struggle badly with something as simple as picking up an object it hasn't seen in training data before. Speed is a mechanical problem with a mechanical solution. General intelligence is not. And it's the piece every major country in this race, including the United States, is still fundamentally working on. Hardware, way out in front. Brains, still catching up. That's the honest split. It's a very different story than domestic chips just beat Usain Bolt. And this pattern isn't unique to robotics either. It's almost exactly the same story that's played out in electric vehicles, in drones, in solar panels. Chinese manufacturers reaching world-class scale and precision on the physical hardware side, often faster than anyone in the West expected, while the software and decision-making layer sitting on top of that hardware takes longer to mature. It's a two-track race, and right now those two tracks are moving at very different speeds. The mistake most coverage makes is treating a hardware win as if it automatically means the whole race is won. It doesn't. A robot with perfect legs and a confused brain still can't do your laundry, still can't safely navigate a cluttered room it's never seen before, and still can't tell the difference between an object it should pick up gently and one it should avoid entirely. This isn't just a viral race clip, though. There's real money and real politics stacked behind it. Morgan Stanley projects the global humanoid robot market could reach $5 trillion by 2050, with China alone potentially running more than 300 million of these machines by then. That's a bigger number than the entire current global auto industry. Beijing has designated humanoid robotics a national strategic priority, and the capital chasing this industry right now, state and private, is enormous. It's also becoming a genuine flashpoint, not just an industry statistic. The FCC recently banned imports of Chinese humanoid robots, citing national security. The Pentagon separately added Unitree, yes, the same company that finished last in Beijing, to its list of firms it says carry ties to the Chinese military. Sit with that irony for a second. The company Washington flagged as a national security concern is the exact same company that just got beaten by nearly 3 seconds in its own country's showcase event. Geopolitical anxiety and on-the-ground performance are not always tracking the same curve. That mismatch matters beyond one company's stock price, too. When policy decisions get made based on a narrative, this company represents the cutting edge of a rival nation's military-adjacent technology. And the on-the-ground reality is messier than that narrative suggests. You end up with regulation that's reacting to headlines instead of hardware. That's not a reason to dismiss the security concerns entirely. Some of them are legitimate and worth taking seriously. But it is a reason to be skeptical anytime a single viral result gets treated as proof of a broader technological lead in either direction. One race, one afternoon, one very public stumble. None of that settles the bigger question of who's actually ahead in a race that's going to play out over the next decade, not over one weekend in Beijing. And this isn't even the first time this exact research center has quietly embarrassed the entire industry's expectations. Tiangong Ultra's predecessor won last year's inaugural half-marathon in an internal test, at a pace that beat human world record pace, back before most people outside China's robotics industry had even heard the event existed. This isn't a single lucky breakthrough. It's a research center that keeps clearing bars nobody expected a machine to clear this soon, one event at a time, mostly outside the Western spotlight, until a 100-meter dash finally made it impossible to ignore. That's actually the more useful signal buried in all of this. Not the 100-meter time itself, but the fact that this specific team keeps showing up early to records other labs assume are years away. If that pattern holds, the interesting question isn't whether Tiangong Ultra's successor breaks 9 seconds next year. It's what other quiet, unglamorous tests they're running right now, away from cameras, that we won't hear about until it's already been broken. So let's pull this together, because a lot just happened. 2 robots beat Usain Bolt's world record, on the clock, independently timed. A robot broke a 30-year-old human jump record from a standing start. The company everyone expected to dominate, $50 billion, viral fame and all, finished dead last in the same race. And the headline crediting a domestic chip for the win overstates what actually happened. It was legs, motors, and control software doing the work, wrapped in framing built to sound like a bigger leap than the engineering underneath it. Real speed. Overstated chip story. Both true about the exact same race. There's one more detail worth sitting with before we close this out, because it's the funniest and most telling part of the entire event. Neither winning robot could actually stop on its own. One needed a padded wall. The other needed a stretcher. Bolt, at the end of his historic run in 2009, jogged a victory lap and waved to the crowd. These machines needed medical transport to do the equivalent. Speed without control isn't really victory. It's just a very fast, very controlled crash. Somewhere in that image is the entire state of the industry, in one frame. Superhuman on the straightaway. Completely lost the moment the straightaway ends. Watch whether next year's games close the gap on the part that actually matters more long-term. Not raw sprint speed, but stopping, recovering, and adapting the way a human body does without even thinking about it. Watch whether Cambricon and China's other domestic chip makers actually start showing up inside the robots winning these events, not just in press releases about the broader industry. And watch Unitree specifically, because a $50 billion valuation sitting on top of a robot that finished dead last in its highest-profile public race yet is exactly the kind of gap between hype and performance that tends to catch up with a stock price eventually. So here's something worth doing before you close this video. Pick one number and put it in the comments. How fast do you think next year's winning robot runs the 100 meters? 9 seconds flat? 8.8? I'm building next year's coverage around exactly that question. And subscribing is the only way you'll actually find out whose number was closer to right. So, genius engineering milestone, or a headline running faster than the technology underneath it. A robot really did beat Usain Bolt. Whether it did that because of a Chinese chip, or in spite of not having solved the much harder problem sitting right behind that speed, is the question actually worth sitting with. The next video breaks down exactly which chips are really inside these machines, and how far behind the actual brain of Chinese robotics still is compared to the legs.